Welcome to another edition of Free Game. This week is going to be inspired by the movie Sinners. I just saw the movie a couple of days ago. I loved it and thought it had some really great themes that we could discuss when it comes to emotional intelligence. For those of you who have not seen the movie Sinners, do not worry. There will be no spoilers in this, I promise, because I know the movie just came out 36 hours ago. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find lessons that you guys can learn from the movie while still not ruining the good parts for you. Now, for anybody who has seen Sinners, you're going to really appreciate this live because Ryan Coogler, my God, Ryan Coogler might just be the Spike Lee of this generation. I have never said that before. You guys know I am a movie buff. I am obsessed with film and cinema and television. And so I'm really remiss to make any comparisons of one person to the other. But honestly, when I watch Ryan Coogler and his evolution as a filmmaker, it feels the way that I felt as a kid watching Spike Lee. It really, really does. And what's crazy is my sister and I went to go see the movie. We were supposed to see it today, but we decided to see it the night before it opened instead. And something just said, nah, I know we're busy, but let's go see the movie. There's a couple tickets left for the screening happening the night before the opening. Let's go see it. And we went to go see the movie, and we had reservations at Issa's restaurant. Shout out to Issa's restaurant, Somerville. It's gorgeous in there. If you've never been to Somerville and you're in LA, please see if you can get a reservation. They're very hard to get. And so we walk into the restaurant right after seeing the movie, and we end up being seated 10 feet away from Ryan Coogler. And seeing him right after watching the movie made me so emotional because I walked away feeling so inspired from watching the movie. I was like, God, if I ever get a chance to even breathe the same air as Ryan Coogler, I will take it as a sign that I need to commit to working on my book and all these screenplays that I've started. And literally 45 minutes later, God said, bet, there he goes. Now what? So I have no more excuses. That's a little bit funny. All right, guys, let's get into it. For those of you who are new here, Free Game is something that we do. Well, we're supposed to do it weekly. I haven't done it in a month. Let me not lie. Let's start from the beginning. If you're new to me, hi, my name is Bluecentric. I'm a writer, producer, and an emotional intelligence coach based in Los Angeles, California. I specialize in self-mastery and ego death. And 3 times a year, I do an 8-week interactive live workshop online via Zoom called Own Thy Shift. Every time I know that I'm gearing up to do a new workshop, I always try my best to at least a couple of times a month do something called Free Game, right? Someone said, did you say hello? I'm saying hello right now. And yes, I did say hello. That's a weird question. Anyways, so I try my best to do something called Free Game where we basically take time to, did I say hello to Ryan Coogler? Guys, don't ask me questions. I have ADHD. The questions are going to distract me. So anyways, 3 times a year, I do something called Own Thy Shift. And leading up to Own Thy Shift, I do something called Free Game where I come on here and give you guys free tips and free tools and free frameworks from emotional intelligence standpoint so that you can get a taste of what it's like being in class with me. The hope is that you'll watch this and sign up for the class. For those of you who are just coming in, I just put the registration link at the bottom, ots25.eventbrite.com. OTS stands for Own Thy Shift. So I do this in hopes that you'll sign up. But even if you don't sign up for the workshop, this is still my love offering to the community where you can still learn some gems to help you regardless of if you can afford to work with me or not. Now, here's the thing that's interesting about Free Game. I've been doing this for 5 years. I have been doing free emotional intelligence love offerings for 5 years. And I cannot tell you how many people who've said to me, Blue, I started watching these videos for free thinking I would never work with you. And after a couple of years of you helping me out, I was like, let me go talk to the lady. Right? So I just need you guys to know that the reason I do this is, number one, I want to attract new clients who didn't even know that we were meant to work together. But number two, I also want to make sure that financial disparities, particularly in this time and ecosystem that we're in, doesn't stop people from getting the help that they need. Okay? I think that's enough of a framework. I gave you guys a little bit of time so people could come in. Now let's get into today's lesson plan. Today's lesson plan is, I wrote this down because I literally came up with this morning when I woke up. And it's my sister's birthday, so everybody say happy birthday, Mel, in the comments. So I'll let her know that you guys are wishing her happy birthday. Lessons from Sinners. 7 lessons from Sinners. Mind you, I just saw this movie. Mel, when did we see the movie? 36 hours ago? I just saw this movie 36 hours ago, so this is fresh on my mind. But you know, as an EQ coach, as a writer, as a pro-Black person, I'm always looking for the messages. Somebody said, happy birthday, fellow Aries. Mel, they're wishing you happy birthday, love. All right, let's get into it. She said, thank you, guys. All right. Oh, look at all the birthday messages. So sweet. I see Donnie in here. I see Jason in here. I see Carlos in here. I love it when my fam comes in here. All right, let's get into it. Lesson number 1 of 7 from Sinners. If you haven't watched the movie, don't worry. This will just be an amuse-bouche that is meant to make you want to watch the movie. And if you have watched the movie, then you can appreciate where I'm coming from. I'm just going to put it like that, okay? Lesson number 1 from Sinners. Black witches are angels, not demons. Yeah, we starting swinging, okay? Here's the thing. I'm Haitian and Cuban, right? And whenever I tell someone that I have a lineage of black witches in my family, the first thing they do is freak out because they're thinking evil, right? The occult just means the hidden. It does not mean evil. The word occult does not mean evil. And I want you guys to be very, very clear that I love Christianity. I was raised in a Christian environment. I completely understand that Christian ordeals are meant to be a path to help us live in a way of righteousness. I also understand that religion is very different from God, right? Because God is one thing, religion is man-made. And so as someone who understands the fables that are meant to be a framework for us to live our lives with integrity and be ethical and be kind to one another, I also understand that anything touched by man is inherently flawed because man is inherently flawed. As a result, when enslaved Africans, I don't call them slaves, when enslaved Africans were brought to North America, what we now know as North America, a lot of them had a lot of really powerful, magical, ancestral DNA in their bellies, right? And that ancestral DNA is what created the Haitian Revolution. That ancestral DNA is what empowered Nat Turner and Harriet Tubman and everybody else to fight for freedom, right? We have an ancestral DNA that comes from the motherland that is steeped in rebellion. Turn the other cheek is religious dogma from Christianity. But African religions, ancient African religions, actually believe in cause and effect. If you slap me, I'm not turning the other cheek. I'm making sure that you get consequences. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that so much of the dogma of Christianity that I don't subscribe to is the part that was intentionally infused into Christianity by white supremacists trying to talk black people out of their revolutionary spirit. So when you guys hear that I come from a long line of Cuban witches, if you had heard this 1,000 years ago, you would clap for this. You would understand that that means my ancestral DNA is intact. My spirit of revolution, my spirit of integrity, my wanting to protect my family and anybody who comes against it, right? My desire to gatekeep and keep what is sacred is tied to that lineage of black witches. But Christianity has taught you to fear it, taught you to fear the very thing that might save you and me. And so what I love about what Ryan Coogler did is he reclaimed that magic that black people have in our bodies that we've been taught to disclaim and say is not good and is not of God. Right? The same God that made me black made me a witch. And so when you watch this movie, I'm not going to get emotional. When you watch this movie, whether you are Christian, Buddhist, agnostic, atheist, or whatever, I hope in his own way that Ryan Coogler has found a way to remind you that our magic is not bad. And that any preacher on a pulpit that tells you that our internal birthright of magic is bad is mistaken. So that's the first lesson from watching Sinners, is that black witches are angels, not demons. Whenever y'all are in trouble, right? Whenever y'all find yourself in some fuck shit, what do? You call that witchy friend that you make fun of for having crystals in her bra and for having candles on her altar and for burning sage. You call her and ask her for help. Do you know how I know? Because that's me. My friends, I have a friend who was agnostic. I think I mentioned this before. A colleague of mine who was agnostic, was not sure what she believed in. And one day she was going through something, and my spirit guides, because I've been doing readings since I was 5 years old, right? The first reading I ever did in my entire life, and I don't talk about spirituality a lot on here, but over the last couple of weeks, my friends have been begging me to not just talk about emotional intelligence, but to also talk about spirituality. And one of the things I've realized is, I did my first reading when I was 5 years old. My mother had been crying in her room for several days. And I was like, oh, mommy's sad. I hope she's okay. I go to bed and my grandma sends me a message in my sleep. And my grandma sends me a message to tell her daughter, my mother, that she's proud of her, that everything's going to be okay, and to not cry over that man anymore. He wasn't worth it. His only purpose was to bring her a child. And now that he served his purpose, my mother could let him go. Mind you, I'm talking about my own damn daddy. Okay, my first message, my daddy caught a stray. So I wake up in the morning and say, Mommy, Grandma has a message. Mind you, Grandma died 20 years before I was even born. My mother's like, Grandma? I was like, yeah, Grandma has a message. And with the level of specificity that stopped her in her tracks, I passed on a message to my mother verbatim from my dead grandmother. And my mother's eyes welled up with tears, and she simply said thank you and went to her room. That was the first reading I ever did at 5 years old. That is the spirit of how Black witches work. We, more often than not, are the ones who are here trying to save our people. We are not evil. We are not demons. We don't eat children like they do in Disney fairy tales. Black witches are the backbone of our community across the diaspora. And I love that. Coogler made it a point to underscore that through the character of Annie. So if you've seen the movie, you already know who Annie is. And if you haven't seen the movie, I hope I've inspired you to see her with fresh eyes and to not recoil when you find out that she is a Black witch. Lesson number 2 that I've learned from watching Sinners, and that we could all learn from watching Sinners, is be careful who you call family and invite to the cookout. Now, there's a young lady named Mary, played by Haley Steinfeld, and she is beautiful, looks a little swirly, looks like she might have a little Black in her family. I think the premise is that she's an octoroon. I'm not being inappropriate. I'm just saying she's like 1/8 Black. And her thing is, she's a white woman who constantly makes it clear that she wants to be enveloped in the magicalness of the Black community that she is adjacent to. Right? She's not part of the Black community because she's only 1/8 Black, right? And she looks white presenting, but she still wants access. And there are several scenes in the movie, I'm not going to spoil it to you, where she shows up to a Black celebratory space demanding to be let in. Them letting this white woman infuse herself in their communities and insist of being given access is what undermines them. We need to stop inviting every fucking body to the cookout just because they know how to do the Dougie. You know what always happens, right? Back in 2014, 2015, when Black Lives Matter was taking off, when my career in digital media took off, if you guys have ever seen me on CNN, my first episode of doing anything on CNN was because of what happened with Black Lives Matter and with the Cosby. 2014 was an interesting time where the community was blowing up, right? We were getting murdered and our heroes were being taken down. And in that moment, I remember talking to my mom and she was like, be careful, Blue. I don't want you accepting this job to return to CNN because you are too honest. Those white folks will kill you for your mouth. So I turned down a job at CNN, right? I think I've talked about this a couple of times because I knew that the way that I speak truth to power was not going to fit for the politics that is necessary for cable news. In that moment, though, I also recognized my mother was telling me a lesson about gatekeeping. She wasn't telling me not to take that job at CNN because I shouldn't take it. And many amazing people since me have taken a job at CNN. Although it's so funny, the person who I relate to the most when it comes to the way that I present facts is Mark Lamont Hill. And watching CNN fire him felt like a vindication for my mother. He got in trouble for speaking the truth too loudly, right? And so I want to be clear. The second lesson that you can learn from Sinners is the power of gatekeeping and the necessity of gatekeeping in this time in our lives in particular. Those who get it, get it. Okay, this is one of those FUBU kind of lives where if you get it, you get it. If you don't, it's not meant for you. Lesson number 3 that you can learn from Sinners is evil can't always be avoided, but make sure you never invite it in. Those of you who've seen the trailers, this is not me doing a spoiler, understand that the whole premise of Sinners, and this is the joke that I always make to my friends, Sinners feels like if you were watching The Color Purple, but they infused some really sexy vampires, right? It's like The Color Purple with vampires. And I say that as shorthand because that same world, that same lush world that we've seen through The Color Purple, through Alice Walker, or through Eve's Bayou, that super Black old school world where we're reminded of our grandparents, right? Because in my mind as an immigrant, the heartbeat of America, of Black America, is the South. So anytime you see a Southern tale between like the 1920s to like the 1960s, you're going to instantly be reminded of your lineage and of the family and of your heartbeat. And as a Caribbean woman, it's so funny for me because even though I don't have a lineage in the South, my lineage is in Havana and Cuba and Western Africa where those enslaved Africans came from, I still recognize that those people still remind me of my grandparents, right? The diaspora is so rich that if I'm seeing old Southern Black people, I'm being reminded of old Caribbean people, right? And there's a beauty in that. And so we need to be clear that when you watch this film, the evil was constantly on the outside and you had to invite it in because in vampire lore, you have to invite a vampire in your home before it can come in to do damage. How many times in your life have you seen someone and sensed something was off, but ignored your better judgment and invited them into your life? How many times have you kicked yourself for giving access to someone who you knew was toxic? One of the things I learned last year is I met someone who I was really interested in who was constantly making jokes about how toxic he was. He constantly joked about being toxic, but he never joked about fixing it. I've learned when people tell you who they are, believe them the first time, right? That's an old adage for a reason. And so when you see something that feels off, do not invite it in, right? So number one is black witches are angels, not demons. Number two is be careful who you call family and invite to the cookout, because not everybody who wants to be like family is family, particularly those who don't belong to our community. We need to gatekeep better. Number three is evil can't be avoided, but you don't have to invite it in, which brings us to lesson number 4 that we can learn from sinners. And you guys, I'm looking down because I have notes. I always have notes. Lesson number 4 from sinners is familiarity isn't an excuse to ignore your instincts. I'm going to pause on this one. Familiarity is not an excuse to ignore your instincts. In the promos for this film, you've seen that infamous scene now where the character of Cornbread, big tall Cornbread, is at the door. They've known Cornbread his entire life. He is family. He is skinfolk and kinfolk. And yet, one night he comes to the barn looking and feeling different. And their first instinct is to pause. And then they try to override that instinct to let him in. And it is the black witch amongst them, the magical spiritual woo-woo girly amongst them, who says, now hold on, Cornbread, something looks off. I think there's something so impactful about that moment, because how many times have you had a best friend or a favorite cousin or a play uncle or somebody in your vicinity who's grandfathered into your heart, who is grandfathered into your life, who you've known for a very, very long time, and yet one day you see them with fresh eyes. You notice that the familiarity is cool, but the safety that you once actually took for granted feels off. Now, I will say this. I've talked about this before. I had a best friend, a childhood best friend, for 24 years. I had the same best friend for 24 years. I used to tell people all the time, I know I've been engaged many times, but never actually got married, but I don't actually need a husband because my best friend is my gay husband. I love him. That's my family. We got each other. It was very Will and Grace, very codependent. One day, after I had worked really hard on my healing, I was having a conversation with him where he said things that I stopped hearing through the ears of familiarity and started hearing objectively. And I was like, this man doesn't mean me well. My life is elevated. I've moved to California. I'm running a whole department at the Griot. I'm making all this money. I was making enough money a month that back in the day would have been what I made in a year. So I was at my financial height. I was at my spiritual height. I was at my emotional and intellectual height of my life, right? This was the apex of my life. When I'm older, I will always look at that year as being as one of those years where I was really doing it, right? And my best friend of 24 years, he didn't feel safe. It would take me several weeks to realize that he meant me harm, not because he didn't love me, but because there's a spirit of envy that had crept into his spirit despite our 24 years that made me unsafe. And I was willing, just like the black witch and sinners, to be like, I love you and I've known you your entire life, but I'm willing to put familiarity aside to admit what I'm seeing in the present. In this present moment, you are not safe. I want you guys to think about that. You could know somebody and love somebody your entire life. The minute you feel that they are unsafe, there's nothing honorable about letting all these years be an excuse for you not to protect yourself and listen to your instincts. And then that's a beautiful lesson when you're watching something like a vampire film, because in the movie, you had to constantly question people who you knew and loved for years. Are they safe though? I love you, but are you still safe? I would push everybody watching this, do that now. Pretend that there's a vampire apocalypse happening and you don't know for sure that somebody that you've known for a long time is safe. How do you vet your current people to make sure they still have your back. Because the fact that my biggest op was my best friend of 24 fucking years, and after I cut him off, I found out that the same company that I had brought him onto, he was working underneath me. I had given him a raise. I was making sure he was getting compensated properly for the first time in his life. I brought him into this group that I had built with my bare hands, and when I let him go and fired him, well, he quit after we stopped being friends. When he quit because he couldn't stand the fact that I was onto him, I later found out that he had been sabotaging relationships the entire time from a place of envy, and people believed him because he was my best friend of 24 years. In Sinners, you find yourself constantly questioning, yeah, I know this is somebody that we're supposed to trust, but do we really? I love that. That feeling you have in the theater, please bring that into your real life, okay? Next point, next lesson from Sinners is never let fear stop you from committing to what you love. There's a character named Sammy. Again, I'm not going to ruin the film, but Sammy is constantly being told that he has to choose between God and his music. And it was so hurtful watching that because you could tell that music was his purpose. Music was his reason for being. Music was what God brought him here for. And yet his father, brilliantly played by Saul Williams, was constantly telling him, no, that music of yours, it's too powerful. It's so powerful, it can't be of God. Please let it go. I won't ruin it for you, but there's a pivotal moment where Sammy is given every reason to fall back into fear. Right? Sammy is given every reason to say, fuck what I've been brought here. Fuck what I love. I'm going to let the fear win. I want you to watch the movie and see what he decides. Because there was a moment where I was watching the movie like, oh man, if he gives up music because of what happened to him in this film, it will break my heart. And because the movie was constantly breaking my heart, like Shonda Rhimes. You know how Shonda Rhimes would just kill a main character and not say sorry? Sinners was killing people that I love so much that I was like, oh man, Sammy, I hope you make the right decision. But in real life, think about that, right? Are there moments where you're asked to give up your purpose because of fear, because of conformity, because of you want to assimilate, right? I was just telling my little sister the other night, I was like, yo, I have been completely self-employed for the last 3 years. My entire life, I have been a journalist. I have been a writer. I've been a podcaster. I have been a staff writer. I've always had a stable check while I was chasing my dreams. The last 3 years is the first time in my entire adult life where there was no safety net. And I was like, damn, Mel, should I get a job? Should I stop living in my purpose full time and get a job? And we discussed it. And within 90 seconds, we were like, yeah. I'm going to have to die on this hill, guys. I'm going to have to be the girl who follows her dream until the day she dies. Because my sister was like, you're paying your bills just fine. Like, you're actually doing it. But that fear, even when you're successfully paying your bills by following your dreams, there's always that fear of, do I need a safety net? So one of the lessons from Sinners is be mindful about that. Do not let fear rob you of your purpose. Now, lesson number 6 of 7, because I have to run because I'm taking my sister to get her nails done for her birthday. Lesson number 6 is, this is going to be a funny one. Do not fuck with the anointed. I don't want to talk about this too much because I'm going to ruin the film for those who haven't seen it. But one of the lessons of Sinners is do not fuck with the anointed. Now, what do I mean when I say that? Now, perfect example, right? I'm constantly talking about my witchy lineage and the work that I do. There are certain people when they walk into the room, and I'm not going to be humble right now. I'm too busy being accurate to be humble. So if you're someone who believes that black women need to be modest, you might want to skip this part. I'm about to pop my shit. I am clearly anointed, right? I'm clearly an anointed person. I have been knowing my purpose since I was 5 years old. First reading at 5. Knew I wanted to be a writer at 8. Got my first writing job at the Harvard School of Public Health at 23. I have lived in my purpose my entire existence. The only time I was not living in my purpose was the first 4 years of my life when I was a nonverbal autistic kid. But other than that, I've always had a purpose. That is an anointing, right? People who are anointed recognize each other. And others who are not anointed also recognize us. Guess what happens though, right? People think, oh my God, Blue, you're anointed. That's so dope. No, it's not. We pay for it. You know right now, without thinking of yourself, think of at least 2 people that you know who are anointed. I know several. I seek out my own kind because I recognize they understand the plight that comes with it. Someone who is anointed is someone when you see them, you're like, oh my God, this person is so authentically them. And they're so powerful. And they might not even fully understand how powerful they are. And they clearly have a purpose. We all know where we are in the presence of an anointed person. Because when I'm in the presence of an anointed person, I make it a point to say it out loud, always. I remember one time we were having a meeting for this app that I was consulting on. And Jeff Johnson, former, I think he was Cousin Jeff from BET. I was on a call with Jeff Johnson, and Jeff Johnson spoke, and I literally got shivers up my back. And I said, brother, you know you're anointed, right? And he laughed. He was like, yeah, you too. And that immediately solidified our friendship, right? We had a fondness for each other immediately because we both recognized, ooh, you are here for a very powerful and specific reason, and I see you. I always make it a point to call it out. I also make it a point to be protective of the anointed. Because here's the thing, right? When you fuck with someone who is anointed, you're not just fucking with them, you're fucking with every spirit guide on the other side that brought them here to do their work. And in this movie, anybody who got anywhere close to messing with the anointed was very quickly dealt with. I want you to also take that into your real life. That's all I'm going to say on that because I don't want to make threats on live. And the last but not least, number 7, the 7th lesson that I learned, and we could all learn from watching Sinners, I'm going to read my notes, is find something that you're willing to die for and then live for it. The 7th and final lesson from this beautiful movie, Sinners. Yes, it's a horror film. It doesn't mean that you're going to have to use that as an excuse. I know a lot of you don't watch horror films. This was more like Get Out, you know what I mean? Where it's actually a social commentary using horror as a vehicle to talk about the real life horror that happens in real life, right? It's all a metaphor. The vampire is a metaphor, right? Someone who's trying to suck your blood and take away your life force and your magic and your energy. That's why I love vampire films, because I feel like it's a perfect analogy for what happens when spiritual warfare takes place, right? And so the biggest lesson in my mind that Ryan Coogler illustrates in this film, other than reminding Black people to stay centered in their magic and to not let white supremacy rob them of admitting that their magic has goodness steeped into it. The occult does not mean bad. It just means hidden and secret. And there's a reason why shit is hidden and secret. Think about that. Why were we taught that something that is hidden and secret is bad? Because white supremacy doesn't want us to gatekeep, right? So the biggest lesson from this film is find something that you are willing to die for and then make sure you live for it. I'm willing to die for my integrity. And there's a character in this, I will not tell you who it is, because again, I do not want to ruin the film with any spoilers, but there's a character in this film. Oh, I don't want to get emotional. Sorry, guys. I'm PMSing, so I'm about to get emotional for everything for the next week. There's a character who I deeply related to in this film. And there was a moment where this character had to choose life versus integrity. And they made the choice that I would make. And it broke my heart, right? And I need you to understand, guys, the reason that I speak with such conviction is anything that I'm willing to live for, I'm also willing to die for. Right? My mother used to always joke, she'd be like, please don't become a police officer or a firefighter, because you're the kind of person who would run into a burning building and not think twice about it. Right? And she's right. You have to be living for something that you're willing to die for. And those of you who are walking, well, somebody said, what movie are we discussing? We're talking about Sinners. For those of you who are walking around feeling listless and restless and like, oh my God, the world sucks, I don't know what I'm here to do, it's because you haven't found something that you're willing to die for. And so for me, I cannot stress this enough. Find something you're willing to die for and then make it a point to live for it. I cannot tell you how 2018 changed my life. My aunt, who was a second mother to me, I came to this country with her. She passed away unceremoniously. And her death rocked me. It rocked me. She's the picture that you see when you come to my house on my altar with flowers and rose water and candles. And what's crazy is my entire life did not start until the day she died. Her death is what reminded me to live. Right? Death is a reminder to live. Right now, people watching this, I can feel it in my spirit. There's a couple people who are watching this who are dealing with death, who are dealing with grief, who are dealing with losing someone that they deeply care about. Because the reason why my eyes are watering is because I believe in energy transference, which means at least 2 or 3 of you in here are dealing with death, and I'm feeling it through the live. So I apologize if I'm taking a moment to catch my breath. But for those of you who are watching this who have dealt with death, there is so much death in this film. But the way, I'm not going to get emotional. The way they deal with death in this film is that death is not an end, it's another beginning, right? When you pass away, there's a whole region of people, a whole version of life waiting for you, of people who have been calling out favors for you on the other side, who want to meet you, right? I'm not saying that I want to die anytime soon. I'm trying to live to be at least 100. My friends all know I want to live to be 100. It's an ongoing joke, but it's not a joke. So I'm not saying rush to death, but just understand that death is beautiful and bittersweet because it is a reminder to live. I have never lived more richly than I had since I lost the person who literally raised me before my mother came to this country. And now my mother, you guys all know, is in the hospital. Well, she's in a facility. She has kidney failure. She's getting dialysis 3 times a week, right? Every single day I wake up that my mother is still alive is a day that I am grateful. I have never been more grateful for my mother than I am knowing that we are living in a space where her mortality is finite. I'm spending my birthday. I'm headed to Boston in a couple of days to spend my birthday with my mother. Yes, I'm going to party with my friends when I get back to LA, but now birthdays mean, look at my mother getting to see her child turn another year older. Things that I would used to take for granted now feel like the most amazing thing in the world. So when you watch this movie and you find yourself wanting to cry, just give me a second. When you watch this movie and you find yourself wanting to cry because it makes you realize how finite life is, remember that's your reason for living, right? That's your reason for living. So, I got emotional. I was trying not to. I want to thank Ryan Coogler and the entire cast. As a magical person who's usually under attack and who's gotten used to people not understanding that I just love my people so much that I want us to get free. This movie unlocked something inside of me. I felt so seen and so vindicated. And that's why I want you guys to watch it. It's not just about vampires and Michael B. Jordan being fine as hell. It was a reminder of just how beautiful and amazing and powerful Black people really are. And we've been so under attack since Trump became president. I didn't realize how much I needed that reminder. We all need that reminder right now. And that's why I want you guys to see the film. All right, I need to wrap this up. I got to take my sister to the salon to get her nails done. For those of you who want to sign up, I can't believe I'm crying. For those of you who want to sign up for our 8-week emotional intelligence workshops, you can work with me live every Wednesday starting May 7th. Please go to ots25.eventbrite.com. And we do cry in class. We laugh a lot. We cry a lot. We get to the root of things. My students who are in here are not foreign to seeing me cry, but it's a good cry. It's a cleansing cry. What you're seeing is not sadness. It's gratitude, right? That's why I love film so much. As someone who was born into magic, I didn't choose this. One thing I will say is film to me is the closest thing you can come to a magical mirror. Film has the opportunity to make us see ourselves in Technicolor in ways that we forget to see ourselves every day. The magic that you see in this movie is the magic that our community has always had and never lost, despite all the people who come to our door knocking, waiting to come in to destroy us. So, if you haven't already, tell a friend to go watch Sinners, because we need the box office to reflect how much we need more Black filmmakers, Black, brown, BIPOC, women, differently abled, whatever it is. We need more diversity in film right now, because I'm going to tell you this. For anybody who's like, oh my God, the 2020s are so hard. The 1920s were hard, guys. And guess what happened in the 1920s? We had the Harlem Renaissance. Renaissance is not just a Beyonce album. Times of unrest, political unrest, are always when we get the best social commentary, the best art, and the best revolutionaries. So rather than seeing this as a moment to mourn, see it as a moment to revolt and to build. That's what you can get from Sinners. All right? Love y'all so much. I got to go clear off my face, and I hope that this was helpful. And for those who are asking, I will keep this on my Instagram for the day, and then I'll move it over to my YouTube where it's going to live permanently. Love y'all, and please embrace your magic. Bye.